My name is Clara Hayes, and I am 34 years old and I live in Asheville, North Carolina, where the mountains roll like waves under the sky, and the air smells like pine and earth no matter where you go. I have lived here my whole life, except for a few years I spent in Atlanta trying to make it in graphic design. But that did not work out, and I came back home with my tail between my legs. That was 10 years ago. And since then I have built myself back up piece by piece like a mosaic made from broken glass. I run a small art studio now on the edge of downtown Asheville, not one of those fancy gallery places with white walls and spotlights, but a real working studio where people come to learn how to paint pottery, do watercolor classes, make clay sculptures with their hands covered in mud. I rent space to local artists too, and host open mic nights once a month. It is not glamorous, but it is mine, and I love it more than anything else I have ever made in my life. I wake up every morning at 6:30 whether I need to or not, because that is when the light hits the trees just right and the mist rises off the river like smoke. And I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee that is too hot to drink, and I watch the world wake up. And I feel like I belong here, like I finally figured out how to be still after all those years of running from something I could not name. But everything changed in the spring of last year when a woman named Diane Whitmore walked into my studio with a fake smile. And clipboard in her hand, she was 52 with perfectly curled blonde hair and a dress that looked like it cost more than my monthly rent. She said she was starting a new arts program for at-risk youth in the county and was looking for local creatives to partner with. She said she wanted to fund community art projects, bring murals to underserved neighborhoods, offer free classes to kids who otherwise would never have access to art. I believed her. I wanted to believe her because I remember being that kid, the one who could not afford supplies, could not afford lessons, who stayed after school just to sit in the art room and smell the paint because it made her feel alive. Diane said my studio would be the flagship location. She said she wanted to pour $30,000 into renovations, new kilns, new easels, new everything. She said I would not have to pay a dime, that the grant she secured would cover it. All she said, my name would be on the plaque, that people would know who started it all. I was so excited I barely slept for 3 days. I called all my artist friends, told them the news. I started planning murals in my head, giant colorful things that stretched across entire buildings. I even sketched a logo for the program called Brushstrokes of Hope. She came back a week later with a contract. I did not read it carefully, I should have, but I was too happy, too eager, too desperate to believe something good was finally happening to me. The contract said I had to transfer ownership of the studio property to a new LLC that she was forming. It said it was for tax purposes, so the grant money could go through clean and fast. I trusted her. I signed it. She smiled and said we were going to change lives together. 2 weeks later, Diane stopped returning my calls. I drove to the address she gave me for her office. It was a vacant lot with weeds growing through cracked asphalt. I called the county grants department, and they told me there was no application for an arts program, no funding, no record of Diane Whitmore applying for anything. I ran to my studio and found it had been padlocked from the outside, yellow tape across the door that read, "Do not enter." I looked through the windows and saw everything gone: my pottery wheels, the paint racks, the students' unfinished projects, the shelves of handmade mugs and vases, all vanished. Even the open mic night sign I had carved myself was gone. I knocked on the door of the landlord, who lived above the deli next door, and he told me the truth. Diane had not only transferred the property to her LLC, but had taken out a loan in the LLC's name using the studio as collateral. And when she did not pay the first month, they foreclosed. She was never going to pay. It was all a scam to steal the building and strip it for cash. I called the police, and they said it was a civil matter, not criminal, because I had signed the contract willingly. They said I could sue her, but she was already gone. No forwarding address, no trace. I sat on the steps of my studio that night and cried until my throat felt stupid, naive, like I had handed my heart to a stranger, and she had crushed it under her heels. That was when the anger came, not fast, but slow, creeping up like roots under concrete. It did not burn, it froze. I stopped crying. I stopped calling people. I stopped going out. I sat in my apartment and stared at the wall and planned it out piece by piece. I was going to find Diane Whitmore and make her pay. I started with public records. I went to the county courthouse and asked for LLC filings. I found the name of her shell company, Creative Futures Initiative, Inc., and traced it back to a P.O. box in Greenville, South Carolina. I drove there the next day and stood outside the post office for 8 hours until a woman matching Diane's description showed up to collect mail. I followed her, not close, but far enough to see where she went. She got into a silver Lexus with South Carolina plates and drove to a gated community in Simpsonville, a suburb of Greenville. I went home and ran the plates. The car was registered to a Robert Whitmore, likely her husband. I looked him up in property records and found a house worth $750,000 on Lake Canesti. Not bad for a con artist. I did not confront her. I did not yell or threaten. I knew that would not work. I needed something bigger, something that would not just hurt her, but destroy what she had built on the back of my life. I spent weeks gathering information. I found out she was active in the local Republican Women's Club, chaired a scholarship fund for high school seniors. I found a photo of her speaking at a country club about empowering women through entrepreneurship. The hypocrisy made my skin crawl, but it also gave me an idea. I created a new email account, used a fake name, and applied for one of her scholarships. I filled out the application with a story about overcoming hardship, losing my home to a landlord scam, being a single mother working 2 jobs to put myself through community college. I even attached forged documents, bank statements, utility bills, medical records, all doctored to look real. I applied for the $5,000 grant for women pursuing creative careers. 2 weeks later, I got a response from Diane herself. She said she would love to interview me. She said my story was moving, and she wanted to meet in person. She suggested her favorite coffee shop in Greenville. I agreed. The day of the meeting, I dyed my hair jet black, cut it short, wore glasses I did not need, and dark. Did not look like the woman she had swindled. I looked like a survivor. I arrived early and sat in the corner, so I could watch the door. When she walked in, I saw her face light up, not because she recognized me, but because she loved performative kindness. She loved being the savior, the powerful woman lifting up the downtrodden. She sat down, smiled, said she remembered my application vividly, asked me about my daughter, who did not exist, asked about my art supplies I could not afford. I played the role perfectly. Voice trembling, hands shaking, I told her how I had started painting again in a storage unit I was renting part-time, that it was the only place I could be me. She leaned in and said, "We are going to help you. You are exactly why I do this work." I asked when I would hear about the decision. She said the committee met next week, but she would put in a good word. She said they usually approved what she recommended. I thanked her, cried a little, just enough to make it real. 2 days later, I hacked into the Scholarship Committee's public Facebook group. Not hard, their password was in the bio. It was Dianu123. I changed the meeting time in the event post, moved it up by 2 hours, and then posted as the group admin that all finalists must give a 5-minute speech about their journey to the panel on the day of the real meeting. I arrived 3 hours early. I hid in the bushes behind the country club where they were meeting. I had a long-range audio recorder in my jacket pointed at the open windows of the ballroom. I waited at 10 in the morning. The actual committee arrived, confused why they were so early. I heard them argue about the schedule change, but they went ahead with the meeting anyway. Diane stood up and gave a speech about integrity, about second chances, about how her own struggles had led her to this mission. I almost laughed. Then the first fake candidate walked in, the one I had made up, the one whose application I submitted under the fake name. She started talking about being a victim of identity theft, losing everything to a corrupt system. I watched Diane's face fall. She did not recognize the story, but she recognized the fear, the desperation. It was her own language. Then the second fake applicant walked in, and the third, all women I invented, all with similar stories, all saying they had been scammed by someone pretending to help them. And then the real final applicant arrived, a woman named Leila Carter, who actually deserved the scholarship. She stood up, shook her head, and said, "I do not know what this is, but I did not sign up to compete with actors." She accused them of being plants, said this was a sham. And if this was how the program worked, she wanted nothing to do with it. The room erupted, people arguing, Diane trying to calm them down, saying it must be a mistake. And then the admin of the Facebook group sent a message that popped up on the projector screen. It was a photo of Diane's face with the caption, "This woman stole a woman's art studio in Asheville and vanished with $30,000. In equipment below it was a link to a Google Drive filled with every document I had collected, every form she signed, every bank transfer, every email, every property record, and a video compilation of her speeches about female empowerment with audio from the old recording I found online of her laughing about how easy it is to trick desperate people's silence. Then the chairman of the committee stood up and said, "We are done here. This program is suspended pending investigation." I left before anyone could see me. The next week, the local news picked up the story. A reporter from the Greenville Journal wrote an exposé titled "Woman Behind Youth Art Scholarship Accused of Fraud and Identity Theft." The article linked to the documents I released. It quoted 3 women who claimed Diane had scammed them out of rent control deposits, job training fees, and small business loans going back 10 years. The police reopened a cold case from Georgia involving a stolen craft boutique. Diane filed a counterclaim, tried to say I defamed her, but the court dismissed it because every word I released was true. She could not sue me for telling the truth. Her house went into foreclosure. Her husband left her, took the kids. Her scholarship fund was dissolved. The Republican Women's Club disavowed her and asked for donations back. I did not stop there. I contacted every local artist she had ever pretended to help and asked them to send me their stories. I made a documentary, a 10-part podcast called The Patron Saint of Scams. It went viral on YouTube, 3 million views in a month. I donated all proceeds to a real arts charity in Asheville. The one I originally wanted to partner with. Diane tried to sue me again, this time in South Carolina. I flew there for the hearing. I wore a blazer I bought with the first check from the podcast earnings. I sat across from her, and for the first time in 2 years, I looked her in the eye. She did not recognize me, not at first, but then something flickered in her face, a shadow of doubt and then fear. The judge threw out her case and ordered her to pay my legal fees. After the hearing, I walked out into the sun and pulled out my phone and recorded a short video, just me standing in front of the courthouse. I said, "My name is Clara Hayes. I am 34 years old, and I am an artist from Asheville, North Carolina. Last year, a woman stole my studio, my livelihood, my dream, but she could not steal my voice, and today I stand here not to gloat, but to say this: if you have ever been taken From if you have ever had someone smile in your face and steal your life, know this: you are not powerless, you are not foolish, and you are not alone. I uploaded it online, and within a week it was seen by over 2 million people. And then the twist came: a woman named Marjorie Finch emailed me from Charleston, Florida. She said she had seen my video and recognized Diane Whitmore because she had been scammed the same way in 1999. She lost her dance studio, her life savings, and had given up hope until she saw my story. She said, "Thank you for giving me back my voice." But the real shock came 3 weeks later, when a man named Carl Whitmore reached out, not Robert the husband, but Carl the father. He said he had seen the documentary and could no longer stay silent. He said Diane was not just a con artist, she had been stealing from her own family for years. She had used his identity to take out loans, forged his signature, sold his land. He said he had turned over decades of records to the FBI. She was being investigated for federal wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft across 4 states. I did not ask for any of that money. If it comes back, it will go into a scholarship fund for artists who have been exploited. I'm setting it up in the name of every woman she ruined. I reopened my studio last month in a new location, smaller. But mind the sign above the door reads Clara Hayes Art, not a corporation, not an LLC, just my name. I teach classes every day, and on Fridays I host open mic night. Again, the first person to sign up was a girl named Jessa who told me she wants to be a painter, but cannot afford supplies. I handed her a set of watercolors and said, "Start here." And every morning at 6:30, I sit on my new porch with my coffee too hot to drink, and I watch the mist rise off the river, and I feel whole because revenge is not just about taking back what was stolen, it is about building something better from the ashes, even if it takes everything you have.